Hey, it's Pierre. I got a treat today. I'm going to do a roundup of 8 different Harrow squash rackets. These are the top selling single squash rackets from Harrow. Big thanks to Dave from Harrow for sending me these rackets to review for the blog and to share with you guys and on Squash Source. I've done individual reviews of all these rackets, but I'm just going to try to do as quick as I can a roundup of all 8 so you can see them kind of stacked up one after the other. First I'm going to group them by kind of the head shape so you can see that. First is this classic Harrow head shape, I'll call it. It's sort of a medium-sized head, and the stringy pattern is 14 by 19. And there are 3 rackets. And there are 3 rackets that all are basically the same in that they have a concave frame. So this is the Spark. It's, if you like, it's a sort of a C shape. Instead of being flat in here, it kind of bends inward. And there are 3 rackets like that. There's the Jonathan Power Spark, the lightest. By the way, the weights are my own scale of the fully strung. And any racket manufacturing process has some variability, so you might get different results if you weigh yours, but I'll just tell you what I found. So the lightest was the Spark. Next was the Vapor, and the heaviest of these 3 was the Clutch. Now these were all, let me check my notes. So the Vapor was 143, the Spark was 142, Vapor 143, Clutch 145. So these are all within a couple grams of each other. In fact, all 8 rackets were within 8 grams from the heaviest to the lightest. So really, they could have ended up in a lot of different orders in terms of the weights, just with the variability in the manufacturing process. So they were all weighed between 141 and 149 grams, and that's a strung weight. I think the strings usually add 10 to 15 grams. So you can do the math on that, but they're all sort of light to sort of medium weight rackets. Right. So the next group is the same classic Harrow head shape and stringy pattern, but this is the convex head, so it does not bend in like a C shape in there. It's more flat, or maybe bumps out a little bit, and so I think I found that the ones that were concave, gave the frame a little bit more stiffness. These were a little bit more flexible. Now, interestingly, this was, of these 3, one is the lightest racket of the bunch, the Harrow Stealth Ultralight Retro, and then the other Harrow, the standard Harrow Stealth, and the Harrow Stealth Camo version, which are pretty similar. Camo is actually a couple grams heavier. They were the heaviest of all 8 rackets, these 2, and this was the lightest. So that was interesting. But these 3 share the same frame shape. And then lastly, we have a couple of somewhat outliers. First is the Vibe. So this is conventional head like the others, but it has 1 less cross string, and the head is a little bit bigger. So you can kind of see the Vibe is this one. It's just a little bit longer strings, and so a little bit bigger head, a little bit more forgiving, I'll talk a bit more about kind of what I thought of the rackets a little bit later. And then lastly, we have the Harrow Silk. This is the teardrop from Harrow, and so obviously this was the only of their top frames. This was the only teardrop, and so that's the frame shapes. Now, in terms of the string, just real quick, these 2 rackets, the Stealth Ultralight Retro and the Silk, have this more. All these come with Harrow branded strings. I think this is called the T300. I'll have to double check, but I think that's what it's called, and it's supposed to be similar to Technofiber strings in that it's not that braided kind. So that's the strings, and then all the others have the Harrow's Barrage. I think it's called Barrage Pro Strings, and that is more grippy and is I think that braided kind, and it's supposed to be more like Ashaway strings. Right. So we've talked about the frame shapes. We've talked about the strings, and we touched a little bit on the weights. Really quickly, I'm going to go through them one by one on the weight. So this was the lightest, Stealth Ultralight Retro. Next was the Spark, 1 gram heavier. Next, after that, was the Vapor. There's that. Under my notebook, there's the Vapor. Then we had the Vibe. Where are you, Vibe? Here you are. There's the Vibe. And then we had the Clutch. Next was the Silk. And then lastly, we had the two Stealths, the regular Stealth and the Stealth Camo. So I'm going to now try to put them in my order of which was my favorite and kind of give my little last feedback along the way. Like I said, you can check out the individual videos to get a little bit more in depth. So I think the first one I'm gonna put at the bottom of the 8 as the Stealth Ultralight Retro. I really like the design on this. I just didn't feel like it was. I felt like it was a very the opposite of stiff, whatever that is. Yeah, you know, it felt kind of like it was a whip kind of feel to it. And so that'd be if that's your kind of feel, this would be more up your alley. I preferred the ones that were a little bit stiffer, although the design on this I thought was really cool. My next, this is just, I don't want to pick on the teardrop rackets, but I just liked Harrow's take on the typical, the traditional frame shape so much. It was hard to, it's hard not to go with those. This was, you know, this is used by Marwan El Sharbaghi and We Worn Low. So you know, so there are some pros using this racket, but you know, I had to put this one second in my list, or I should say 7th in my list. Next, I am going to put probably the Vibe. This frame was more forgiving because it had a bigger bigger sweet spot. I mean, it's the bigger frame, bigger sweet spot, and it's quite light, even despite the larger frame. And it's got it also. I forgot to mention, it has the convex head, so it's very forgiving, and this is an enjoyable racket. But I'm going to put this at number lost count 6. All right, and then next I'm going to put the 2 Stealths. These played very, very similar. They were a bit heavier. They really packed a lot of punch. But seeing as I'm sometimes lazy around the court and need to kind of flick something at the last minute, I kind of tended to prefer the ones that were slightly lighter. But I still got a kick out of these. So these were kind of tied for my 5 and 4 spot. Ooh, now we're really down to the tough. You know, all 8 of these rackets are good, but it's hard to pick. It's hard to eliminate rackets as I go. Now, I think this is their most popular model. I think the Vapor. I'm going to put this at number 3. You know, I can't explain it, but it just didn't feel as sort of nimble, I guess, as the other two rackets I'm going to show you. When you weigh it, it was light, but just as I'm swinging it, it felt kind of thick. I know it's a very sort of subjective thing to say, but I guess this is all pretty subjective. All these rackets are very good and very similar. But I'm going to put but just based on feel, I'm going to put this number 3. So that leaves 2 left. So which one's going to be the winner? My number 2 is probably going to be the Jonathan Power Spark. Sorry, Jonathan, but it really came down to, for me, the clutch, which was my favorite. I'm not even sure why. It just feels the best in my hand. It feels like this. It feels like feels a little bit head heavy. It's light, but it's head heavy, and it's lighter. And my weighing, it came in at 145, and the frame is printed as 150. So maybe I got a light one. I don't know, but it just felt like it's so personal. You have to go with your sort of personal judgment. This was just the right one for me. It was light enough to kind of, and this head was one of the small versions, which is my personal favorite. I like to be able to kind of carve things out of the corners and off the walls, but it just a little bit of head heaviness kind of encouraged me to take a full stroke. And the Harrow, the Jonathan Power Spark was just a little lighter in the head. Also very fun, maneuverable, but I just didn't get the same. It didn't have that little extra weight in the head that I thought the clutch gave me to help with kind of carve out my swings and prevent me from getting too kind of dinky with the ball. And it was kind of a surprise to me because the clutch was, of all these rackets, probably the one I had heard the least about. I mean, I've certainly heard of the clutch, but it hadn't been on my radar as much as some of these other ones. So there you have it. It was a difficult decision, but I'm gonna say the clutch is my favorite. But all these were excellent rackets. These are all Harrow's top of the line rackets. So it's a personal choice, and so definitely give them a try and see how you like them. This is the Harrow squash rackets, single squash rackets roundup. Thanks a lot.